What's going on, everyone? Welcome into Bayou Bengals football. So let's get into it. So I wanted to, I don't know, there's a lot of different ways we could talk. We've said a lot about the upcoming matchup. Obviously it's a big one against Florida State. But LSU, the main topic of discussion when it comes to not just for this game, but for football in general. If you want to win any football game, you got to win the line of scrimmage. And this game is going to be really about the line of scrimmage. The team that wins the line of scrimmage probably is going to win this game. So it's going to be exciting to see early on who takes control of the line of scrimmage. Last year, you could argue Florida State won the line of scrimmage essentially the whole game. Now, was there times LSU was kind of, it was a stalemate. Obviously there was probably some plays, but for the majority of the game, Florida State controlled the line of scrimmage last year. So, but this year, the way LSU is trending and the final product, the final version of LSU football in 2022, what we see, that and what LSU could be this year is potentially the formula to beat Florida State, excuse me. So, yeah, I think that's to keep in mind. That's what's interesting. That's why there's so much excitement about LSU, but there's also a lot of I wouldn't say skepticism, but also just intrigue is probably the best word, because the way they finished up against Purdue was awesome, but as an LSU fan, you're expecting more of what you saw against Purdue, as opposed to you hope that what you saw versus Purdue is more of a sign of things to come, rather than the team we saw against Florida State that lost, that let Florida State control the game for essentially 3 quarters, or we don't want to see the LSU team that was, pretty much outplayed, outcoached by Georgia for 4 quarters. So we are hoping as LSU fans that you see more of the LSU we saw against Purdue, as opposed to the times that they looked down this year, as opposed to the LSU versus Texas A&M, or as opposed to the LSU we saw against Florida State, or the LSU against Georgia. So hopefully more of the same. Hopefully more of the good. Hopefully it's more of the good from last year combined with they can get even better this year is the hope for LSU. But yeah, so Brian Kelly, we'll touch on, his press conference. He had a press conference yesterday. We'll touch on that a little bit. John Emery is not going to play until week 3, so kind of talk about what else. Mason Smith out for the game, suspended. Armani Goodwin may not play. I think he still has the doubtful label, or maybe they said probable. But yeah, John Emery, he could not say what's going on with John Emery. He could not put out that information. But John Emery will not be back till game 3, so it'll be without Emery, Mason Smith for sure for this game. But yeah, and the reporter asked about Denver Harris. Now, Denver Harris certainly is an interesting guy. Harris is a talented corner, a guy who it sounds like it's been an adjustment coming to LSU. It sounded, maybe staying at A&M would be better for him as far as getting on the field, more opportunities, because you worry about a guy like Denver Harris, where, not that he's in the doghouse, but he's had enough setbacks where, to me, like, his talent can't really overcome some of the setbacks. He was not with the team for a few days, so to me, that's really, you can't afford that stuff unless you're the man. You can get like if Mason Smith, the 1 game suspension, that's really nothing. He's going to come back. If he's healthy, he's going to have a phenomenal year, be the top defensive tackle off the board. But a guy like Denver Harris has not flashed enough high-end level ability where The coaching staff is gonna kind of let some of that stuff slide by. So Denver Harris will watch. Still is a good player. I think he can play meaningful snaps for LSU. Maybe if it's not this year, certainly in the future, could be a guy that could make an impact for him on special teams. But keep an eye on Denver Harris as this season goes along and in the future, and hopefully he stays on a good path, because he is a talented guy. He's a former was a 4 or 5 pretty highly touted guy coming out of high school. So yeah, I like Denver Harris. I think he's a good player, and they're going to need him they're going to need him for depth and most likely key contributions on special teams this year. Mason Taylor. You get the feel like Mason Taylor really wants to shine, not just throughout this entire season, but he wants to really shine in this Florida State game. This is where he really started to make a name for himself last year against the Seminoles. So yeah, Mason Taylor got a chance to make certainly a big impact for this LSU team, not just throughout the course of the season, but this week 1 game against Florida State. It's like I was thinking of like last night. Florida used the tight end a lot. I think with LSU, I think that's going to be key. I think LSU is going to want to get the ball to Mason Taylor. Is Florida State, going to do anything special to try to stop Mason Taylor? You get the feel for Florida State, they're probably going to want to take away. You're really ideally going to want to try to take away either Mason Taylor or Malik Neighbors. Like one of those guys, if both those guys have a big game, you feel like that's a formula for disaster in regards to Florida State, coming out victorious. So ideally, you want to try to limit both of them. You're not going to take away both of them completely. You want to ideally, you want to try to limit both, if not both, one or the other. So yeah, keep an eye on Malik Neighbors, Mason Taylor. We'll see if Florida State does anything special to try to stop these guys in this game. But yeah, and then the classic. I know we touched on the line of scrimmage, but the classic go-to question with LSU this year is the offensive line going to be elite, like one of the top in the nation? And then is this offensive line going to be like, are we going to see this offensive line play at elite level in week 1? I think that is a huge burning question for LSU fans. And, certainly we will have a chance to see if this LSU offensive line can be elite against Florida State. And then not only, if they're elite against Florida State, not only can they continue to play consistently at an elite level throughout the course of the season, is the big questions for the LSU offensive line. But yeah, I was listening to Mike Norvell interviewed on the Rich Eisen show. He was giving credit to Jaden Daniels. Talked about the threat he has as a runner, as a passer. I thought that was really cool. Showing respect to Jaden Daniels. Jaden Daniels certainly is an excellent player, a guy that's done a lot of really nice things throughout his career. Talented guy, former big-time recruit out of high school. A couple excellent seasons, a couple good solid seasons at Arizona State. Really helped. Looking back on it, that probably was why Arizona State was so good. Having Jaden Daniels at quarterback certainly certainly helps. It's one of those things where you look back and Arizona State's records are pretty good, but was it more so just Jaden Daniels was that big of a boost for him, or was it more so that the team was that good and Daniels was just solid? I think it was more so. Jaden Daniels is really just that good. So, but yeah, Jaden Daniels got a chance to really, there's a lot of question marks for LSU there's a lot of question marks that we could get answered against Florida State. Like, could the offensive line be elite? The question mark for Jane Daniels is, are we gonna see the improvement as far as like the game slowing down, him more comfortable in this offense, him being able to, be more of a consistent thrower of the ball? Are we going to see all these things occur in this game? You got to believe if Jaden Daniels has one of his best games, throwing and running, you got to believe that's a really that's certainly a formula for LSU to come out with a win. But yeah, LSU got a chance to really make a statement in this game. And, I think because both the winner of this game, I think there's going to be a lot of momentum for this team, and there's going to be it's going to really amplify the talk and the hype for the winner of this game. Because if you look at Florida State, quietly has won 6 games in a row, and then LSU coming off the game against Purdue. People tend to, the recency bias, people tend to remember stuff more recently. So LSU, it's 7 straight wins in a row, or Florida State, it's 7 straight wins in a row. And for LSU, it's back-to-back games where you look very dominant, and especially against Purdue. Purdue was just a complete, utter domination. That game wasn't even, 42-14, 49? It wasn't even that close. I mean, that game was over. Game was over in the first quarter. LSU really, talk about beating the brakes off of someone. That is an example of beating the brakes off of a team, and that's exactly what they did in that football game. Yeah, it's too bad John Emery's not going to go, but what's interesting is with Goodwin not being able to go, with John Emery not being able to go, you talk about is there too much depth at running back? Which, I don't know, they didn't use the term too much depth at running back, but you said, people almost kind of raise the question, do you really need that many running backs? But with things happen, with injuries and suspensions and whatnot happening, it's crazy. Like, Goodwin, Emery down already. Now it's like, oh man. So now you're really counting on Logan Diggs and Josh Williams and maybe one of the freshmen, if it's Holly or Trey Holly or Caleb Jackson. You're really counting on those guys to really step up now. So hopefully they can do so, because that's the thing. The odds are on any given game, a couple guys can have an off night. So say Diggs, that's the thing. No John Emery in this game, no Goodwin. Let's say Diggs and Williams play, they have an off night. Do you, in that case, that's kind of like, that's when, depth can always be tested. I mean, let's be honest, So, yeah, LSU, their depth certainly could be tested in this game. Probably not at running back, but yeah, that's the thing. It's, there's depth. It's kind of I guess you could make an argument, what's better to have, just depth or just high end, or just 1 or 2 high end starters. Now, like if LSU had, Fournette and Darius Geis like they had a few years ago, but they had really no third guy, would they be more confident with that as opposed to what they have now? I think, you probably you probably would prefer Leonard Fournette and Geis, or when has LSU had really good 1-2 punches? Like going back in the day, like when they had, was it Stephen Ridley and Charles Scott? That's the thing. Would you rather have a high-end 1-2 punch, or would you rather just have multiple really solid guys? I think maybe you'd probably take the 2 high-end level players, but for LSU, I mean, you got. I guess I'm not sure where I'm going with this. I guess that what I'm just kind of trying to reiterate the point that LSU, they know they had depth at running back. They just know, in the SEC, in college football, just the way things happen, how depth can get thin quickly. So, but yeah, LSU running back room, we've talked about it a lot. It is a strong unit, a talented unit, and a unit that really has a chance to go and and prove some people wrong. That was kind of, those are the running back and the defensive back room are interesting because they both, having, I could go, I talk about, and a lot of people talk about having depth is great, but say no guy really emerges, like Logan Diggs, Caleb Jackson. Those are some of the guys they're hoping that emerge at the running back position, or in the secondary, Zy Alexander, Chestnut, Ryan. They're hoping one of those guys takes another step and really breaks out and emerges, and then like I touched on, Diggs or Jackson. To me, I think that's the main question, or that's the thing. Having a bunch of solid starters, sometimes can actually hurt you because it's just like, we've done so much, having a solid starter sometimes is good, but sometimes you just want a guy to really emerge. So that's the thing. LSU, they really would love to have Zy Alexander, they really have one or multiple guys from each of those position units emerge, whether in the secondary it's Zy Alexander, or at running back it's Caleb Jackson emerges, and Logan Diggs emerges, and then and Deuce Chestnut emerges. Sage Ryan continues to improve and live up to the 5-star billing as one of the top recruits out of high school a few years ago. So that's what's going to be interesting to watch for LSU is the two, I guess, weakest units, who emerges, and if so, how many guys emerge from those units. But yeah, I guess the good news for LSU, even if they lose to Florida State, you got to believe this is going to be a 1-1 football team heading into SEC play, or who does they play in week 3? It's either Arkansas, Ole Miss, or Mississippi State. So at least LSU will be 1-1, 1-1 at worst heading into week 3 when they take on an SEC opponent. And that's the thing. Obviously 2-0 is obviously what you want to start out. But to me, if LSU, if they're 1-1, I guess that's just not. I don't think you're really that close to hitting the panic button if you're 1-1 heading into SEC play. So yeah, that'll be interesting. But to me, if LSU loses to this game, I'm kind of interested to see the fan reaction. Obviously, it's all going to vary. It's all going to depend on what this game looks like. But if Florida State, no, that's the other side. I made the video. What if LSU blows out Florida State? But to me, I guess, what is LSU fans' reaction if LSU does get blown out in this game? I guess there's a lot of different ways a blowout could look. There's a way where, say Florida State just controls this game for 4 quarters and really utterly dominates it. And they win like 31-3, 38-10, 38-7. That can look completely different too. It's a shootout, but Florida State really just, pulls away at the end, a couple late scores, a couple daggers, put it on ice, and they win like 45-31, 45-28. That's kind of a different tone. That's kind of a different, I guess that way is not necessarily a blowout, but it is winning handily. So, Florida State wins that way. I think that is, I think it's cause for concern against LSU, but I think that way, I think you'd still be fairly confident that, there'd probably be issues with the defense. But if it's issues with the defense, is it that the secondary just gets torched? Because that's the thing. I mean, with Florida State, the receivers they have are going to put a lot of pressure on them, but they're probably not going to see as talented a group of wide receivers maybe as Florida State for the rest of the season. Maybe a couple teams close, like Alabama. Alabama could have a receiving core that might be comparable to Florida State. Florida State probably is a little better, but Alabama has a chance to be really good. So that's the thing. If they lose to Florida State in a game where it's kind of a shootout and Florida State really pulls out way at the end, and they just can't really stop the scoring rats, then yeah, I guess that is a concern for most likely the defensive line lost the line of scrimmage. The secondary was just not playing well at all. They probably got burnt, probably gave up some big plays. Maybe the offense did have a turnover or two. But yeah, that I don't think you'd hit the panic button in a loss like that. But I guess an utter domination for 4 quarters, which I have a hard time seeing that, then, I think that LSU fans might hit the panic button after that. And, that would not be good. But yeah, a lot of different ways you could break down this game. I think I really want to see a close, hard-fought football game. It's kind of like, looking back to, the early teens, like 2011. I feel like college football fans got spoiled for a while of a lot of good games. We are a little bit, I don't know if I'd say starved, but we are a little bit kind of, there is not really as many good college football games anymore, sadly. Herb Street, Fowler, especially a few years ago, there was just not, like 2020, there was just not any close games. Last couple years, there's been a few, but, I look at look at some of the best opening games, like TCU Baylor going back to 2011. Notre Dame, Texas. I know Texas kind of fell apart as that year went on, but that was a heck of a game. Notre Dame ended up not being that good, but that was a really good game for week 1. And, that's the thing. It's like, I like that. I love, early good week, early season games, early good, good matchups early on, but I just want to see good competitive games. And Florida State, LSU, Brian Kelly was talking about that LSU is a national brand. Florida State, a national brand. It's just, and that's the thing, as a college football fan, you don't just want to talk about brands, but having a brand and a presence is just it's such an added bonus. You see that the spear on the helmet for Florida State, the tiger for LSU, the letters L, S, and U. So yeah, it'll be cool just to see two big brands colliding in Orlando, Florida. A game with a lot of meeting, a lot of hype. It's just gonna be super fun, super exciting. I'm really looking forward to this matchup. But yeah, Brian Kelly was talking about they are going to have to deal with the crowd noise a little bit. Being Orlando, they are expecting that the crowd is going to be a little bit more in favor of Florida State, which will be interesting. I think, noise. Noise last year was the crowd looked like it was a little in favor of LSU. I'm still surprised. Jane Daniels talked about this. He's watched the Florida State tape last year, but he talks about, it sounds like he's grown a lot. And, that's the case for LSU to win this game. It sounds like Jane Daniels, is he's a lot more confident, comfortable this year than he was a year ago. That during that Florida State game, he talked about how he left a lot of plays out there. I think this year you're going to see a Jane Daniels that's hungry to, be sharper, make the plays that are there, get into a rhythm, not hesitate to run and scramble. I know he scrambled a lot, but a lot of times it was scrambling because he just was, almost panicky a little bit. So Jane Daniels really believes that he's going to have a better game this year against Florida State. He's got to go out and prove it. But yeah, a lot of things in there, a lot of things in place for him to have an excellent season this year, and really get a key win for them. And this is really a defining win. Last year you could say that was the case for Jane Daniels beating Alabama, but you could say this year that's be a really defining win over Florida State. So yeah, Jane Daniels, high expectations for him this season. We'll see if he gets it done. Just LSU hoping that he can take another step as a passer and continue to play at a high level. I'm going to wrap with that. Thanks for tuning into to Bayou Bengals football. Stay tuned for more episodes and clips from the show.